Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are having a Spooktacular! Too late for Halloween Marvel Spectacular.
Yes.
So basically we're going to be talking, our main topic is going to be Thor, Love and Thunder and Werewolf by Night, two Marvel properties that we're finally getting around to after we finally finished our long coverage of She-Hulk and House of the Dragon. So we're finally getting to those. Next week we're going to finally get to Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, but today we're covering the Marvel stuff. We also got a few news stories to go over, some interesting news, some exciting news about a person that Will and I are particularly fond of, and some Marvel news as well, and some other things, some renewal news and other stuff, and then a few things to look forward to on the horizon. But let's kick things off with On Beat. On Beat is, of course, our news segment where we talk about the news from the past week. And we're going to start things off with The Witcher has been renewed by Netflix ahead of its third season, which hasn't aired yet. It has been renewed for a fourth season. So this is now official. We got two more seasons at the very least of The Witcher. The caveat is that Henry Cavill for the fourth season is being replaced by Liam Hemsworth.
Yes.
This seems to be all above board, very friendly. Henry Cavill himself posted a big, press release about it. So there's no shit talking going on around this. But on the internet, there's a lot of shit talking going on about this. Not from the people involved in the property, but from fans. Because Henry Cavill, and I've said this, kind of carried that series. There was a joke that he actually injured himself on the set filming season 2. And my joke for that was that he injured his back from carrying all that weight on his shoulders the whole time. And I think that that's very much true. I say it jokingly, but it's very much true that he really heavily carried that show. It was like the Henry Cavill Witcher show. He carried it. He changed dialogue on the spot when they would be filming scenes and stuff. He'd be like, oh, the original dialogue is actually better here, and would change the dialogue while they were filming.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he was like the Witcher, handler of lore on set, as well as being the main actor. He was such a huge aspect of the show.
Because he was a true fan of the books and the novels, and now, the accusation from one of the show's former producers that there are people on the writing staff who actively hate the source material.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing how Henry Cavill had to, struggle, with keeping, his priority was keeping a book accurate Geralt without, getting in the showrunner's way necessarily. Mm-hmm. And they pulled up, a previous quote he said from an interview where he said he was committed to do all 7 planned seasons as long as the condition was met that they respected Geralt and they kept it, book accurate. And now he's leaving. And some say, well, because he just got the Superman role back. That movie is a long ways off. That's not even in pre-production yet. That's just been...
Plus, he signed on for The Witcher before the whole shit with Superman not being used happened.
And previously, he said in interviews that if he were to be recast as Superman, his work as Geralt wouldn't interfere. He said, it's possible to play them at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, when he was first cast as Geralt of Rivia for The Witcher, he was actively acting as Superman at that time.
Yes, he was.
That wasn't we talked about the stretch where he wasn't involved. That was before that stretch,
Like this movie, that Superman movie he's doing, that that doesn't even have a writer or director attached yet.
Yeah, so it's a ways off.
Yeah. So there's no way that's conflicting with season 4 to the point where he has to quit.
Yeah.
So there's other things behind it. Obviously, like, he's not going to come out and say it. He's a professional. You don't burn bridges by bad-mouthing your former employers.
Mm-hmm. There's also something to be said about the fact that he could leave because he disagrees with the source material and still leave on good terms.
Right, yes.
Like, he could say, okay, I don't agree with this. I don't want to be involved with this anymore. And they're like, okay, we can recast you if you don't want to be involved, and then still split amicably,
Somebody
that can still occur.
I saw brought up recently a very recent interview he did just shortly before this was announced. He said along the lines, like, he believes in doing things that he feels are worth doing, and that if he no longer feels something is worth doing, he doesn't want to do it just because...
Yeah, just because he's in the trajectory of doing it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's probably largely the case. I think that him leaving amicably is not a show. Like, I think he is very professional, and he left amicably because he wasn't interested anymore. But I think it's also likely true that he was getting frustrated with the state of the show and how far it was drifting away from the source material. And he was just like, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore. But rather than like what you'd see, like what people expect the drama to be of the situation of like, oh, there was fights on set. He was probably just like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And they said, okay.
I think this combination of like having a former producer who left the production and then goes on to say like these negative things about the production, and then Henry Cavill also like leaving, says more about like how potentially troubled The Witcher is as a production than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of like lost all interest in continuing it. I kind of had almost already with season 2. I'd lost most of my interest in continuing it in general. And now with like, I don't even know if I'm going to tune in for season 3, which is the last one that Cavill's in.
I'm probably going to watch season 3.
I don't think it's that good of a show. Like, honestly, and I've said this before.
I like his performance enough.
Yeah.
I will probably watch season 3. I don't know about season 4 now.
To me, this is kind of like House. And I've said this about House before. I don't know if I've said on this podcast, but I've talked to friends about it. I don't think House is that good of a show.
But Hugh Laurie is brilliant.
I think Hugh Laurie as House is a brilliant character played by a brilliant actor. Yes. But the show itself isn't that great. So it's like when you're watching it, you're watching because you're transfixed on Hugh Laurie playing the character.
It's funny because like it's got a great premise. It's medical Sherlock Holmes with like Hugh Laurie playing like a very cynical version of the Holmes character,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his friend on House was also good. Wilson was also good on the show. But it's like the show itself, it's just another episodic medical series where it's like, oh, here's a new medical thing.
It's a network show at its core.
It's not that special, but Hugh Laurie as the character was so special. I think it's similar with Witcher, but maybe even worse. Like, right. I think it's a pretty cheesy, like low scale, uninteresting fantasy show. I think of all the fantasy shows that are actively on TV, it's probably the worst of all of them. I think I think Wheel of Time is better, which was heavily criticized.
I haven't seen Wheel of Time. I haven't seen everything out there, but I mean,
Rings of Power is better. I think House of the Dragon is way better.
Oh God. Well, House of the Dragon is like, that's probably gonna win a lot of awards for me when we do our end of the year. Yeah. But I digress. Yeah, it's the situation you're describing. I think it's Henry Cavill. It's his passion for the material and his passion for the character that his performance elevates it. So like when he's on the screen, but the rest of it is not up to that level.
Yeah, like not even close. And it's not to say that the other actors in it aren't good. There are other good actors doing good work on the show. Right. It's just not that well written, not that well set up. The visual effects are pretty shitty most of the time. The production quality is so-so. Everything around it just isn't that great. Like nothing really like sings,
It's true. It's like when I watch it, I'm mostly enjoying it for that character.
Exactly. That's it. That's what it is to me. For the main thing of this story, I think is I kind of feel bad for Liam Hemsworth.
Yeah.
He's basically gonna take the brunt of this. He's gonna be taking a lot of hatred from fans that are angry about Henry Cavill and are going to be placing this on Liam Hemsworth, which is unfair.
Yeah, that's unfair. It's not not his fault.
Yeah,
you know?
I think he's in for a rough
job.
time.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel bad for him in this situation because I know he's probably going to give it his best, but I don't know like what his level of familiarity is with the source material or how passionate about it he is, like Henry Cavill was.
Yeah. Our next news story, Sandman has finally been renewed for a season 2 at Netflix.
This has been a thing. We've had like multiple like fake news accounts, mostly fake news, like pushing this narrative that Netflix canceled it. There was just one, I think, that went up yesterday by this Twitter account that was, discussing film.
Mm-hmm.
That posted the article, Netflix canceled The Sandman after one season, and a lot of people took it on face value and reposted that as fact.
Yeah.
To the point where Neil Gaiman, like, annoyed, had to point out that that was a fake account.
Yeah, if you read the actual thing, it says Film Phil or something.
It's discussing Phil. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fake account. This is why the blue checkmark matters on Twitter, but we're not going to get into Twitter politics bullshit because that's not what we cover. But
today the real news story came out that yes, it's been renewed. Don't know why Netflix waited so long, especially since, they released the viewer numbers and the viewer numbers were strong for the entire first month it was out.
I know what Gaiman said after the numbers came out was that yes, the numbers are really good, but the show is also very expensive.
Yeah.
And that that's the thing. It's like, if you're making a show, this is why reality TV became such a blight at a certain point in time, because it was so cheap to make.
Oh, yeah.
Networks were like, well, let's just make more. This is fairly successful.
Let's make a cheap garbage.
Those reality shows, they were everywhere, but they weren't doing as well as like the prestige drama shows were doing.
No.
But the prestige drama shows cost like 20 times more, plus, and then some to make than the reality shows cost to make. So it was just a business idea of like, well, we can put barely any effort or budget into these productions and get a decent return, even if it's not as good as the top return. It doesn't matter because they're making so much more profit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so that's the thing with Sandman. It's like, you might look at it and go like, oh, those numbers are so good. Well, the question is, are they good enough? I mean, that's going to be the same thing. But Lord of the Rings was already picked up by Amazon for multiple seasons already. But the thing is, like, you look at the numbers and you're like, yeah, it did really well. But it's like, yeah, but it cost $1 billion to make. Did it do well enough? And that's, Sandman's kind of in a similar part, not quite as extreme, but like in a sense of, even though it did well, it was always the question of, did it do well enough to get a second season with a reasonable budget? But it looks like it did. So that's good news, because we both were pretty good about Sandman when we discussed it earlier this year.
Yes.
So that's good renewal news. We have another renewal news. It's a bit of a weird topic. We're going to get into some kind of esoteric topics on this, but Girls 5 Eva, which was like the last of the good comedy shows, Peacock original comedy shows, is now going to be moving over to Netflix. I have mixed feelings about this. It's good because it's a good show that isn't getting enough viewership because it's on Peacock. So by the very nature of Netflix being such a much bigger audience, it's going to get more people to be able to watch it. Similar to like Cobra Kai when it moved to Netflix from YouTube, Premium, It's like nobody had YouTube Premium. Nobody was watching that show, but everybody reviewing it was glowing about it. And then it went to Netflix and became massive. So I don't think Girls 5 Eva is going to get massive like that, but it'll get a bigger audience, kind of like Kimmy Schmidt had.
Right, yeah, because Netflix is a bigger platform.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it makes more sense.
I mentioned Kimmy Schmidt, which is another part of this story, is that this is a very similar situation to what happened with Kimmy Schmidt, where Kimmy Schmidt was an NBC series, and NBC was like, we don't know if we want to put this out, and Netflix said, we'll do it. And so they worked out the deal, and then Kimmy Schmidt became one of Netflix's first, like, big comedy shows that they ever had.
Yeah, it was a success for Netflix.
Yeah, and Girls 5 Eva is also a Tina Fey production. She's not the main showrunner on this, I believe, but she's still involved. She's still a producer on it, so it kind of ties into what happened with Kimmy Schmidt there, and it's a very similar situation. But the bigger story here is that basically Peacock's lost like all of their major comedy shows. And that's what Peacock launched as. It launched as like a comedy streaming service that was focused on all these comedy shows. And they took NBC shows that were being canceled, like AP Bio, and they gave them a second life on Peacock. I think AP Bio got 2 more seasons on Peacock before it was canceled. And then that show was gone. And then they launched like that Saved by the Bell reboot reboot, and then now that's gone. And they had that Rutherford Falls series from Mike Schur. It was great. It was a great series. Gone. All those comedies from Peacock are gone, and now everything that's being greenlit there seems to be more kind of in the drama territory. It actually kind of seems to be stuff that you would get around peak sci-fi era. Like, not the bad sci-fi shows, but the good sci-fi shows. Stuff like when Expanse and Magicians were being greenlit on sci-fi. It seems to be kind of like that's the kind of stuff we're getting, at least conceptually. Like, we don't know if the shows are going to actually be any good, but it's such a weird pivot for the streaming service to make.
Yeah, it is. Especially for, a network that made their brand on comedy.
Yeah, I mean, besides just Peacock, NBC themselves, as you said, that's what they were known for. Their Thursday night comedy block, Friends, Seinfeld, all that. The Office.
Oh, yeah. And they were willing to spend untold amounts of money to retain that comedy supremacy.
Yeah, you don't think about comedies costing a lot, but remember way back in the day, the stories about Friends and how the entire cast was going to be getting $1 million an episode.
Yes.
And this was in the 90s.
And when Jerry Seinfeld went in Seinfeld, and the stories of NBC, practically offering him dump trucks full of money to keep it going.
Yeah.
It's
So it's such a strange pivot. And that brings us into our next story, which is that one of our favorite figures in the industry, Bryan Fuller, is going to be doing a Friday the 13th prequel series titled Crystal Lake for Peacock. Which is interesting on two fronts, both because, as we said, it's part of this Peacock pivot. That's going to be our new branded term. We're going to
Peacock pivot.
We're going to copyright the term the Peacock pivot.
This is another interesting thing because, like I said before, Bryan Fuller already has a relationship with NBC from Hannibal.
A relationship that didn't end too well.
No, it didn't end too well. So it's interesting that this is going back to basically NBC.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Hannibal was an amazing show. It was criminally underwatched, criminally under-advertised. It started getting a lot more attention recently. I think in 2020 when it came to Netflix, it just blew up all of a sudden. People were like, oh, what's this show? And they were blown away by it. I remember when I was first introducing people to the show, I was telling people about the show and going, you need to watch Hannibal. It's so good. And people would watch it and they'd be like, oh, was this an HBO show? And I'm like, no, this is a NBC.
This is a network show somehow.
Yeah. And everybody was completely blown away when I told them that because it doesn't feel like a network show at all. But
no, it doesn't, because you would think a network show it would be a case of the week thing.
Yeah, it'd be very episodic, but it wouldn't Hannibal be nearly as graphic or esoteric as that show got.
With Hannibal basically showing up every episode, but the episode not fully focused on him or something. It's just most of the episodes focused on serial killer of the week, which it kind of did at the beginning of the show, but I think very cleverly that was more to set up the character of Will than anything, than any intention of being an episodic series.
Oh yeah, and by halfway through season 1, that was gone.
Yeah, that was gone. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so this is interesting. And not only is this Bryan Fuller working with NBC again, this is Bryan Fuller working with NBC again on a horror prequel series.
Yeah, on another famous horror franchise, which, by the way, Bryan Fuller gave a great interview about this show to Fangoria, where he revealed he's basically a Friday the 13th super fan.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm with him. I was a big fan of Friday the 13th as well.
Yeah, he says, I fell in love with the series. I fell in love with the first movie. I fell in love with the second movie. I fell in love with all of them. Well, maybe not Jason Goes to Hell, but I'm not mad at it.
God, I remember I loved the 7th movie when they brought in psychic powers and shit. I was that.
Yeah, same. That was really cool. But yeah, there's some tidbits about this. The news announcement didn't really give much information except that it was going to be a prequel, and that's being written, directed, and produced by Bryan Fuller, just like Hannibal.
Mm-hmm.
But his interview gives a lot more details about it, while still remaining vague.
I should correct. Bryan Fuller didn't direct anything on Hannibal.
Okay.
He showran and wrote, but the main director, the one that kind of established the visual language alongside Bryan Fuller, working with him, was David Slade. He did 30 Days of Night.
Right. And to be clear, he's probably not directing every episode of this or anything, but
Yeah, it's very rare that a that, you know, especially that a showrunner does that. I think, you know, the Duffer Brothers did a lot of the episodes of Stranger Things, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And I think the only one I can think of where the guy who wrote the show also directed like every episode. And I don't think it was in the first season, but I think it was afterwards, was Mr. Robot.
But anyway, he gave this interview to Fangoria where he gave a few more details about it. First off, he clarified that unlike Hannibal, in this instance, he has the rights to use everything from the Friday the 13th franchise.
Yeah, Hannibal is so tricky. They only have the rights to Hannibal, the book Hannibal, and I think Hannibal Rising. I think that was it. Those were the books they had the rights to, and any characters introduced in those books. So any character introduced in a book after that, they didn't have the rights to. So like they couldn't have Clarice.
Right,
because that was Silence of the Lambs. And they couldn't have
Bryan
some of the other
Fuller
ones.
really wanted to adapt Silence of the Lambs, but never got to do that.
Yeah.
Bryan Fuller also described this as, like, the news reports describe it as a prequel series, but he's describing it as a pre-remakeable series, which he will not elaborate on what that means.
We talked before the podcast when we were going over the news stories for the show notes, and I think this just means it's going to be like Better Call Saul, in the sense that Better Call Saul took place before, during, and after Breaking Bad, you know?
Yes.
The difference is that this isn't a separate story. When it gets to the same time, it's going to get into actually recreating, the series at that point.
Yeah. Again, that's another thing, like, he's going to be basically remaking the movies through this show.
And he kind of did that with Hannibal, too. I mean, there were elements that came, like, after Silence of the Lambs that he borrowed from and stuff.
He did a full Red Dragon remake.
Yeah.
Season.
But he also did stuff, he borrowed stuff from, like, the Hannibal book that took place after Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
And he was taking elements from that and using them, like what's the guy's name? The guy that who ate his own face.
I can't remember.
Berger, right? Berger?
Yeah.
Like, that was from Hannibal, which was after Silence of the Lambs, and he, like, incorporated that into the series earlier and stuff, so yeah. So this isn't, like, unfamiliar territory. We kind of have an idea of what he's saying when he says that, you know?
Yeah.
Even if he can't elaborate further.
He says Jason will be in this. Over the course of the series, you'll see many familiar manifestations of Jason. You know, he talks about his love for the series. He says that on Crystal Lake, he has roughly 5 times the budget per episode that he had on Hannibal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm definitely excited for this. I'm a huge Bryan Fuller fan. We both are. We've talked about Hannibal. When Hannibal was on and we would do like our best of the year things, like it was winning like constantly in like most of the categories. It's like this is a show that we've obviously talked about a lot. Even other people we've had on the show before, we've glowed about Hannibal with. I mean, it's one of the shows we frequently would glow on the show. Like it was Hannibal and like Lost and Game of Thrones and ones like that. Those are the shows that we just absolutely glowed over, you know?
Yeah. And finally, he says, this will be a pretty bloody show. He says, we'll be dropping bodies every week. And then he went on, he said, and I wasn't kidding. If we get to 10 seasons, I'm going to make a concerted effort to find a way to rationally and dramatically, in some fashion, get to space. Says, I can't imagine it going to 10 seasons, but I will put that out there. And that, I haven't got past laying out the first 3 seasons.
I love Bryan Fuller. I'd be excited for anything he'd be involved in.
Yes.
So what I'm so excited about is that, and we'll get to this because our next story is also about Bryan Fuller. We went through a stretch of no Bryan Fuller.
Yes.
And it was painful.
Since he left American Gods.
Yeah. He would get involved in something. Like he was involved in Star Trek Discovery, but like only like for part of the first episode, basically. Yeah. And then he was like gone, you know, and then he was involved in the setup for Interview with the Vampire, and then that got completely rewritten and he wasn't involved in that afterwards, you know. It's like, so we've been like, okay, well, what's Fuller doing? What's he doing? And we've been wondering this for a while, so it's exciting that we don't just get one story of something he's working on, but 2. And that brings us into our second story, which is that Mads Mikkelsen, Hannibal himself, is going to appear in Bryan Fuller's directorial film debut, Dust Bunny, which is about an 8-year-old girl who talks to her neighbor, or tries to hire her neighbor, which I think is Mads Mikkelsen, I'm not sure, they didn't say specifically, to hunt a monster from under her bed that she says killed her family.
That is an amazing premise.
Yeah.
Also, if you're going to hire somebody to kill a monster, I can't think of a few people better qualified than Mads Mikkelsen. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Super exciting.
Yeah, that's gonna
love
be
Mads
cool.
Mikkelsen, love Bryan Fuller, and them working together again is, of course, just amazing.
Yes, I'm all for that.
Cannot wait. We already glowed all over Bryan Fuller from the last story, so we can move on.
Yeah, we can move on. Yeah.
Let's move on to our next 3 stories are all Marvel stories, all specifically Marvel Disney Plus stories.
Marvel.
So first off, VisionQuest was announced as a Disney Plus series. This is going to follow probably White Vision, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
from the end of WandaVision.
I mean, yeah, that was a huge loose thread.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we were wondering what was going to happen with that. Well, now we're getting a spin-off series. It's in development at Disney Plus. I saw a lot of people online were like, oh, do we really need this? I'm like, yes, we do. Vision's a great character. Speaking of WandaVision spin-offs, we knew about the Agatha series. It was before it was called House of Harkness. Now it's called Agatha Coven of Chaos.
Yeah.
But the Disney Plus series has
actually like name-wise better than House of Harkness.
It's all Harkness of the Dragon.
Yeah.
But Coven of Chaos, her new Disney Plus series spinoff of WandaVision, has cast Aubrey Plaza from Parks and Recreation and Joe Locke from the recent Heartstopper series. Have both been cast in the series. These are the first 2 new castings. We knew Catherine Hahn, of course, was reprising her role as Agatha, and we knew that Emma Caulfield Ford, who was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer as Anya, was going to be reprising her role as Dottie.
Yeah, was in WandaVision. And also, like, I don't know if it's confirmed, but also there's rumors that Elizabeth Olsen is going to be in the series.
I mean, it would make sense, you know, not necessarily as like a new moments with the character, but I mean that they have history. So this is something they can reflect upon at certain points, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So it would make sense for that. It would also be a way that you could possibly bring the character back into the MCU. So that would be exciting as well. The other rumor going around is that Joe Locke from Heartstopper, who was cast in the series, could be playing, this is just rumor territory, a aged up Wiccan. So one of Wanda's kids. So.
Oh, yeah, okay. That makes sense.
That's a rumor going around the internet. Yeah. I don't know how much of a basis there is for it, but
I have no idea, because doesn't that kid stop existing as soon as Wanda's spell is lifted?
Yeah.
Like, that was the whole point of like Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
So I don't know like how they're gonna make that happen. Yeah, multiverse, yeah.
This is the multiverse phase. Speaking of Marvel Disney Plus shows, we have one more, which is that Wonder Man, which we knew was in development from Destin Daniel Cretton from Shang-Chi. It's the director of Shang-Chi, was developing a series with Andrew Guest, who is a writer on Community, serving as showrunner. We knew about this series, but now it's cast its lead character, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II from Watchmen. He played Dr. Manhattan in the HBO Watchmen series. He was also what's the character's name in Aquaman, the villain?
Black Manta?
Black Manta, yes.
Okay.
He was in the Aquaman movies. He's going to be in the new one as well. He is going to be playing the titular character of Wonder Man, aka Simon Williams. I really don't know too much about the character. I read in the news story mentioning it that apparently he went to like Baron Zemo and got like funding, and part of the condition of the funding was that he was going to infiltrate the Avengers or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
They're probably not doing that here.
I don't know. I have no idea what they're doing with it.
I have no idea. It's just like, I don't have any expectations for it, because like, I was never a Wonder Man fan. Like, that character was always kind of like whatever for me. Like, he was basically like a C-tier character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the comic books. Like, he was an Avenger and stuff, but like, nobody was saying like how much they loved Wonder Man. I don't even think the character had his own series. I could be corrected on that.
Yeah, but I mean, they've done a lot with like some of the more obscure characters.
Yeah. I mean, this has, I mean, basically for me, this is a blank slate, so they can do whatever, like, because my knowledge is like nil. I gotta be honest, I didn't really read Avengers comics.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah, I mean, my Marvel Comics knowledge was mostly X-Men or just generally mutant related, like all the different mutant spin-off series.
It's mainly X-Men and Spider-Man was like the bulk of it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The two things that make this interesting to me is Yahya Abdul-Mateen II from Watchmen. He's a great actor. It's a great pick. And Dustin Daniel Cretton, who was the director of Shang-Chi.
Uh-huh.
So, and that was great. Shang-Chi was amazing, you know, so we'll see what that means.
We'll see. I mean, I haven't been too excited about the Disney Plus stuff lately. We'll see how it goes. I literally don't know what to expect here because I know so little about this character.
Yeah. We have a Disney Plus thing we're discussing later in this episode, so we'll have to see what you think about that, but we'll get to that later. Our last story for On Beat is that we have a trailer for Willow. We got a new one. Continues to look great. I'm excited about it. This, again, looks better than The Witcher. Another fantasy series looks better than The Witcher.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks good. It looks fun. It is jokey, that seems to be the thing.
That's what Willow
these
was,
days.
you know?
Yeah.
I saw somebody make the good point that fantasy that's leads more towards children or family entertainment has kind of not really been, there isn't really much of it right now. Since Harry Potter ended, that was pretty much the last one that was really good that was doing anything. And now it's all this everything's kind of trying to copy what Game of Thrones did and be all edgy and dark and stuff. But a lot of fantasy was kind of written for children and stuff and written for families. And Willow as a movie was kind of fit into that niche as well. And so the series for this, it looks like it's going to be doing that again, focusing in that direction. And so it's going to be kind of fitting into an underserved niche, you know?
Yeah.
So that's exciting about Willow. Continues to look great. I'm excited I was actually a really big fan of the Willow movies. It's one of my earliest movie-going memories was Willow. So it'll be exciting to see it again. So that's it for our On Beat segment. Now we're moving on to On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next week or so. We're going to start things off. Sonic Frontiers is finally coming out on Tuesday, November 8th for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, and Nintendo Switch. I do not care about Sonic. How about you?
You're a Sonic super fan.
I'm traveling around at the speed of sound.
Yes,
however that song goes.
I mean, I don't know. 3D Sonic games tend to be hit or miss.
Hey, but this one's ripping off Breath of the Wild, but apparently the people making the game don't see it. They don't understand why people are comparing it to Breath of the Wild.
I mean, I don't know how much that's true.
There are visual cues taken straight from it.
But it's not fully open world game. It's an open zone game where it's the same as Pokemon Legends where it's self-contained areas that are just wide open.
Mm-hmm. That's the Xenoblade games too are like that, except the X. X was open world, but the other ones were all kind of
X was a true open world game, which is weird because Microsoft did that and then they're okay, never again.
But yeah, we've seen this kind of thing. So the open zone kind of idea.
Yeah.
I'm not too, are you excited about this at all or?
No, my sister is, but I'm not.
Well, yay for your sister.
Yeah.
We got another game coming out though, the very next day on Wednesday, November 9th for the PS4 and PS5, God of War Ragnarok. This one I think is going to get a lot more attention.
I think so. I'm probably going to end up buying it.
I don't have the systems for this game.
No, you don't.
So I can't play this game, unfortunately, but I remember seeing the last trailer and it looked really exciting, some of the stuff in it. And the first of the God of War remake games, not the original God of War, but the last one that came out, won tons of Game of the Year awards, and it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And this looks like it's going to do the same thing. When you get your computer you're planning on buying, you will be able to at least play the first one, the first remake, because that's on PC.
Yes, I might. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I have tons of games to get through, so I don't know if I'll just have the time for it, but it looks good. It's interested me. I just currently don't have the hardware for it. Warrior Nun is returning on Thursday, November 10th on Netflix. This is interesting because it kind of this is one of those shows that they recommend to people who are fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the same way they would recommend The Magicians or Supernatural to people that were fans of Buffy. Warrior Nun kind of fits into that same niche of an action adventure adventure with like teen kind of stories mixed in, as well as like a lot of lore, but also some comedy and some other, it kind of in action. It kind of fits into that kind of field. Netflix had like 3 shows like that. They debuted around the same time. And this is the only one that survived. Cause remember they had that, couple years ago, Netflix just went cancel happy and they canceled all the other ones. They canceled Teenage Bounty Hunters, which was another one that was like that. And they canceled, what was the one that we reviewed it, but you didn't like it?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's fine. We'll have to go through that.
But that was the other one. It's like, and all 3 of those came out around the same time, and Warrior Nun's like the only one that survived.
Let's talk about, maybe I'll check this out. Maybe I'll check out Warrior Nun finally.
Yeah. I can't guarantee you'd like it, but like.
It hasn't really been on my radar, but maybe it's decent. I don't know.
It was pretty good. I actually quite enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it? Okay.
Yeah. Tactics Ogre Reborn, coming on Friday, November 11th to PS4, PS5, PC,
Tactics
and
Ogre,
Switch.
Obviously a classic strategy RPG.
It's a little bit controversial because it has that Square Enix like blur filter.
Oh god, yes, that's right. Yeah,
that people don't really like from a lot of the Final Fantasy remakes and stuff.
Yeah, let's smear Vaseline all over everything. Good job.
But that's coming on Friday, November 11th to PS4, PS5, PC, and Switch. Tactics Ogre is an absolute classic of the genre.
Yes, it is.
My Father's Dragon. This is an animated kind of family movie. It's coming to Netflix on Friday, November 11th. It features the voices of Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things. That's Dustin. Chris O'Dowd, who's like an Irish actor. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He was in the second Thor movie. He was Natalie Portman's date in that movie. A very small role. Mm-hmm. And Alan Cumming, who, speaking of Marvel roles, was Nightcrawler in the old X-Men movies. So those 3 are all doing voices as well as others for this animated movie about dragons. So if House of the Dragon has left you wanting more dragon, well, now you have more dragon. Next, we have Mythic Quest returning for its next season on Friday, November 11th on Apple TV+. Do you still have Apple TV+?
No.
Did you ever end up watching Mythic Quest?
No.
It's one of the few Apple TV+ things that I'm kind of interested in.
That you're interested in?
But I don't have Apple TV+.
Yeah, it's $5 a month.
Yeah. I don't like playing Apple.
Right. You're going to have to pay them when Vince Gilligan's new show comes out.
Yeah, but I want to pay them as little as possible, so I'll start paying when that show starts.
Yeah.
And then stop as soon as it ends. But Mythic Quest is coming back on Friday, November 11th on Apple TV+. Our next 3 are all movies coming to movie theaters on Friday, November 11th. All of these. Starting off with Spirited, which is a Christmas musical starring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. It had a new trailer, but I didn't watch it, so we're not discussing that. I mean, it looks okay. About as good as you'd expect from a modern Christmas movie, I think, which haven't really been good. I don't think there's been a really decent Christmas movie in like 20 years.
It looks like the spin they're doing with Spirited is like, it's a Christmas Carol, but like, what if a Christmas Carol was like a buddy comedy between like Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas, was it past or present?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It's like,
I don't know.
Because Will Ferrell's character, like it's entirely focused on him and not like the other 2 ghosts. So it's strange, but okay. It looks all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's got Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. That's about the best I could say for it so far.
Yeah, nothing in the trailer like really made me laugh. So
yeah, we'll have to see when we start getting more word about what's going on with it and stuff. But that's what we know for now. The Friendship Game, which is a new horror movie about a bunch of friends playing a game to test their friendship, and then they start dying. It kind of feels very much in vain with a lot of like modern horror movies that are kind of in that teen supernatural slasher category. This one stars Peyton List from Cobra Kai, and it's coming again Friday, November 11th to theaters. And then lastly, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, that's the big one.
On Friday, November 11th. Yeah, gonna watch it for sure.
Yeah. Oh, obviously.
Yeah. It's all news at 11.
All right. If you said you weren't watching it, I would know that you're a pod person. Like, oh, damn. Tyson's been replaced.
They got to him.
Yeah. It's like that Terminator thing where like, this is not Tyson. This is not your Tyson.
Yeah. Oh, your foster parents are dead.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's it for our On the Horizon segment, and that leaves only full spoilers. as I mentioned, we're having a very Marvel full spoilers this week because we're going to be talking about Thor, Love and Thunder, and we're also going to be discussing Werewolf by Night. Let's kick things off.
One thing I enjoyed more than the other. Can you guess? Ooh.
My guess is that the thing we're going to talk about first is the one you didn't like as much, which is Thor, Love and Thunder. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct.
So what is your state of enjoyment on this? Because some people hated this movie.
I don't hate it.
Some people, it's not one of those divisive, like either love it or hate it kind of thing. There's a whole range of what people thought of this movie, but
I don't hate it. I think it's fine. I think it's a pretty middle of the road Marvel movie to me. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about it after I watched it. I think the thing that really brings it down, ironically enough, is the humor. It's too much of it. They lean way too hard into the humor, and I love Taika Waititi. I love his sense of humor, so it's weird for me to be saying that. But yeah, in this movie, like, it's too much to the point where it just doesn't work.
Let's break this down.
It drowns out, like, the dramatic moments and the other stuff.
So I can get a better perspective. Let's break this down quickly for me. Rank the Thor movies.
Okay. So Thor Ragnarok, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Thor, the original Thor, number 2. Thor Love and Thunder, and then the last one is Thor the Dark World. Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I think that fits about right for me. I might put the original Thor and Love and Thunder kind of around the same footing for different reasons, for very different reasons.
Right.
But like, I kind of agree in general with that kind of assessment. Yeah, I kind of agree that the humor got a little out of hand in this one. They went a little too far. I think they had the right balance with Ragnarok and maybe just went a bit too far on this. I think one of the biggest criticisms I've seen is not even for something the movie did badly, but that the movie did well but just didn't have enough of. And that was Gore the God Butcher. People loved Christian Bale's performance and they're why was he in it so little?
Yeah.
Why didn't we see any God butchering?
Exactly. We didn't see him kill a single god after like opening of the film, where his character's established. And it's so weird because we see like the aftermath of his kills, like we see the big dead god and stuff, but it's like, man, I seriously thought when I was watching trailer stuff, I seriously thought like he was gonna be the one that killed Zeus, and then that never happens. Again, it's bizarre. Like, he basically does nothing for the movie except like taunt children and like get into a couple fights with Thor and company, and that's about it.
I mean, that opening scene was amazing.
Yes, it was.
The opening scene was very like. Have you ever seen Jojo Rabbit?
No.
You need to watch Jojo Rabbit.
I will see like that opening scene is kind of how I wish the rest of the movie was, because it's weird because it's a completely
it's like
different.
Darkly comic. It's comic, but like in a really dark way.
Yeah, in a really dark. It's a completely different tone from the rest of the movie. And I don't know, like, what happened. I don't know if, like, that's the tone Taika wanted to go with, and then Marvel and Disney, like, executives looked at that and said, no, we have to go lighter.
I think it's probably almost the other way around. I think Taika just kind of wanted to have fun making a movie.
That's true, yeah.
And I think that's what he ended up doing. I think a lot of the stuff that I've heard a lot of people complain with, like, absolute hatred about things in the movie that I thought were really funny. But I would agree that those funny things, in a way, they take away from the overall movie, but they were still funny.
No, I agree. Like, there was a lot of jokes in there I found hilarious. Like, again, his humor, like, it vibes with me. Like, his jokes land, but it takes away from other aspects of the movie. They go too hard into it. It's
the narrative suffers because, they're really funny jokes, but the narrative suffers because of them.
Yeah. And that's the problem.
Like I love all the stuff with Stormbreaker being jealous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The way he'll be like trying to summon like Mjolnir, and then like Stormbreaker comes gliding in next to him, and he's like, "Oh, hey, buddy."
hey, buddy. Of course, I was asking for you. Yeah.
Like, I thought all of that stuff was hilarious. I thought Chris Hemsworth was at the top of his comedy game.
Yeah. Chris Hemsworth was fantastic. Everybody was at the top of their game in that. Christian Bale, Chris Hemsworth. I don't have a complaint with any of the acting. They finally made
Jane Foster work. She did not work in 2 of the Thor movies. She just was never a great character.
Well, they gave her like they gave her an actual meaningful like storyline in this one. So
yeah.
in the previous movie, her storyline was Thor's girlfriend on Earth.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, both her dramatic story and her, like, Mighty Thor, more comedic timing stuff with Chris. Both of those worked, like I thought, that was like, oh, they finally, cause that was the kind of joke about the Thor movies was that they had Natalie Portman, a huge actress at the time, playing this role and there's like no chemistry and nothing worked.
And I understand
why
why Natalie Portman did not want to do Ragnarok.
Yeah. I think a lot of the actors had a pretty bad experience with Dark World.
I think what happened was, like, she just was not satisfied with the role or the material, and I think what roped her back in is the promise of actually getting to wield the hammer and getting to become Thor, herself. And I think that's what enticed her back into doing this.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, and it worked. I mean, like, they took what was, like, a very stale relationship from the first two movies and made it work in a way that it didn't.
Yes.
In the first two movies. So it like made a lot more sense. It was funny when it needed to be funny. It was dramatic when it needed to be dramatic. Maybe not dramatic enough as it needed to be for the whole movie.
Right, yeah.
But it worked, like that was the thing. I was kind of surprised at how little the Guardians were in this movie. Because that was like so heavily advertised as part of the movie.
Basically, like, the beginning of the movie is like he's on a mission with the Guardians and it's all played up. It's a comedy bit basically where he just like reluctantly like joins the fight and then he stands around in grandstands and make this speech talking about how the sky's beautiful or something. And then he goes and single-handedly destroys the enemy that they were fighting, destroys the sacred temple. And then he makes another speech where he says, like, it was all thanks to teamwork. Everybody played a part. It's like,
I mean, there's funny stuff with the Guardians, but it was just like, it was kind of surprisingly how brief it was and how quickly they kind of moved them out of the frame. I think that might have been another problem with this movie is there's too many moving pieces.
Yeah, there is.
And that kind of keeps it, cause like they brought back Lady Sif and her role in it was tiny. And it's like, come on, you brought back Lady Sif after so long and didn't do anything with her. It's kind of like a little frustrating. Like they had Darcy showed up in it, Kat Dennings' character who we saw in like WandaVision last,
Yeah, she was
it was like, oh, it's cool. We get to see her again. She's really fun.
She's in one scene. Yeah.
Selvig was brought back for even less.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, that's kind of the frustrating part about this movie, I think, to me, more than anything, is just that there's too many moving pieces and it didn't, work as well because of that. But like, I think that the dramatic moments that were there worked and were good. I think, Gore at the end of the movie deciding to choose his daughter over revenge was like a scene that worked. It was powerful. I think it really worked.
Everything they did with like Gore, like pretty much worked, when he's on the screen, like, Christian Bale, like he knew how to be menacing when he needed to be menacing. He knew how to be sympathetic when he needed to be sympathetic. It all worked beautifully.
I think it just comes down to there were just too many moving pieces.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else we really want to talk about with Thor: Love and Thunder before we move on?
No, I think that covers like all my basic thoughts. Like I said, it was fine. I enjoyed it, but it's a very minimal role. I have the same opinion on this that I did for the first Doctor Strange movie, which was like, yeah, that was fine. Like that's like where I would place it. It's Ragnarok to me was better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a better executed film.
Yeah. The one last thing I'll say about this, and it transitions into our next piece a little bit, is that one of the things they did really well in this movie that I loved was the way they showed New Asgard and what's happened with New Asgard.
Yeah.
As like this very touristy town. I kind of love that. And the reason this transitions into our next topic is that Marvel's getting into specials now. We have that Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special coming up. The next thing we're talking about is a Halloween special. I think they should do a Valentine's Day special and have it set in New Ragnarok.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
I think I'd love to see New Ragnarok, or not New Ragnarok. Why do I keep saying New Ragnarok? New Asgard. I would love to see New Asgard as just like a backdrop to something else.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Maybe, maybe we will sometime. I don't know.
I think it's just funny. It's so overly consumer and it's kind of a weird, funny town with like a weird assortment of residents. And I think it would really work if they did like, say, a romantic comedy, like Valentine's Day special and just set it there and like no action scenes, nothing. It's just set there. I think that would be kind of funny and interesting. A little way to do a little bit of world building. But that transitions us to Werewolf by Night, which is Marvel's first Disney Plus special. Not a series, not a movie, a special. It's a 1 hour TV special, Halloween special, directed by Michael Giacchino, who is the composer of a lot of famous stuff, including Lost. He did all the music for Lost. He also did the music for some of the Pixar movies like Up. And he's done, I think, a few of the Marvel movies. Don't really remember which ones, but he's done some of the Marvel movies. So he's in with Disney, he's in with Marvel. And they said, hey, okay, you want to direct a special? And he was up for it. And so we got his directorial debut. And I think it was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, it was fantastic. It was done in the style of like the old Universal monster films.
Yeah, like Frankenstein and Dracula and...
Yes, which I thought off the bat was brilliant. It's got this fantastic story about all these monster hunters coming together to claim the Bloodstone, which is, his last name was Bloodstone, obviously.
I got it on here. Ulysses Bloodstone.
Yes. Who in the comic books was a monster slayer. He was like one of the main monster slayers in the Marvel comics for a while. His daughter actually... Should be looking at the notes.
Elsa Bloodstone?
Yeah, his daughter Elsa Bloodstone actually in the comics is a more recent invention. She was basically inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Surprise.
I mean, it kind of makes sense if you watch it, like her attitude about certain things and her capabilities, She's actually, oddly enough, to make the Buffy comparison, Laura Donnelly, who plays Elsa Bloodstone in the special, is also in the HBO series The Nevers, which is from Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
The creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So there's like a little bit of a tie there. She's actually really good in that show, but...
So this show gives us our MCU debut of The Werewolf by Night, Elsa Bloodstone, and also the Man-Thing.
Yeah, Ted.
Yes. Oh yeah, because Man-Thing literally was a scientist named Ted before he got transformed into the Man-Thing.
This was just great from beginning to end. I loved all the homages to the old movies. The fact that it's all in black and white, but like, I think one of my favorite things was like the werewolf transformation scene that you just see as like an animated shadow.
Yes.
In the background. It was like very jerky frame rate.
And I saw like, Michael, how you pronounce his name? Gucciano?
I probably did it incorrectly, but I said Giacchino.
Giacchino. Yeah, like, he said, like, the reason they did that like that is because, like, there have been plenty of werewolf transformations, in film and TV, and he says, they're not going to do a better one than those.
Yeah, so, nothing has topped American Werewolf in London anyways.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's how far back it goes without anybody topping it,
Yeah, it's fantastic. Obviously, like, it's got a lot of blood. It's got kills in it.
It's probably the bloodiest Marvel movie, and I think they get away with that because of the black and white,
Yeah, exactly. Because of black and white. Funny enough, like, most of the kills in the hour-long special are by Elsa.
Yeah, quite a few, yeah.
More so than even, like the werewolf, like Jack Russell, like, he kills a bunch of goons.
Yeah, he kills a bunch of, like, red shirts.
Yeah, red shirts, yeah. There's this fantastic scene, though, where, like, they're in this room, and the door's closing. And
the big silhouette scene, yeah.
And he's fighting, like, all these goons as the wolf, and as he's killing them, like, blood is splattering on the camera lens.
Yeah.
Like, that was fantastic.
I love camera lens splatter. Whenever they put blood on the camera lens, I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. The villain was great. Verussa.
Yeah.
It was Solomon's wife and Elsa's, like, stepmother.
Yeah, from Addams Family Values.
Or Ulysses. Yeah, Ulysses' wife. There's this crazy thing where, like, they set up Ulysses' dead body as, like, a talking animatronic.
Yeah, like one of those, like, what was it, the whole President's type animatronics, like, from Disneyland kind of thing.
And he makes, like, this really corny, like, Crypt Keeper style joke.
Yes, like, I'll be rotting for you.
Yeah.
That was great.
Speaking of that, like, the ending, when the Man-Thing shows up and kills Verussa, like, in, like, the most, like, brutal way possible, because he grabs her with both hands and he burns her up, and then he throws her corpse into Ulysses' corpse.
Yeah. Ulysses' head comes off and rolls down.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great. There's so much about this that was great. I love the procession when they were starting the hunt, and they have like the flaming tuba.
The flaming tuba, like, yeah, all the monster hunters, who, like, some of them are, like, very creepy looking.
You had that, like, bearded, like, Scottish-like guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought he's nice, and then hunt starts, and he's an asshole. Because, like, when the hunt starts, they're competing for a bloodstone. So the hunters are trying to kill each other so that they could be the one, to claim the bloodstone.
Yeah.
They're not only trying to kill the man-thing, they're trying to kill each other.
Did you notice that the one Asian hunter, the guy with the crossbow on his arm?
Yes.
That got it cut off? That he was one of the scientists from Westworld, those, like, 2 scientists?
Oh, yeah, I recognized him. Basically, Jack is there because Jack is actually friends with the Man-Thing, and he's there to try and free him.
Jack Russell is just always a hilarious name for Werewolf by Night,
Yeah,
he's the real terror.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Played by Gail Garcia Bernal, who was like, that was an amazing get for the MCU. That's a good get.
Oh, yeah, that's
Gail
a good
Garcia
get.
Bernal is a great actor.
He did a fantastic job with that.
Very charming. Great character. I want to see more. I want to see more of him. I want to see more of Man-Thing. I want to see more of this side of the MCU. I love the way it ended with everything being colorized, because things didn't just go into color. They went into that, like, colorized color that you got, like, in the 60s.
So it's funny. I was watching James Rolfe's review on this, and he made a great point. Where it's like, Universal was trying to do, like, their own MCU with their monster properties.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Dark Universe, which fell apart. And it's like...
Yeah, with the first movie, with the Mummy movie with, Tom Cruise.
Yeah, with Tom Cruise. And it's like, seeing this, it's like, wait, Marvel can just do this themselves. Under Marvel Comics, they have Werewolf by Night, they have
Dracula,
they have the Living Mummy, they have the Monster of Frankenstein, and they have Dracula.
Yeah.
And all those were like standalone comics for a while.
Yeah.
So they could do that. They could bring those characters together and like do their own monsterverse within the MCU.
Well, it's also funny because that kind of like the atmosphere of those movies was what made them work. And when Universal tried to remake them, they started with The Mummy, and it was just like The Mummy was inconsequential. It was just another fucking Tom Cruise stunts movie.
Yeah, exactly.
That happened to have a mummy in the background. That was like all it was.
Yeah, exactly.
It was so funny that they just completely lost sight of everything that people even gave a shit about those original movies for. And then here we have like a special on Disney Plus that perfectly pays homage to all of those movies in a way that Universal never thought to.
I'm looking at these comics. They actually did a monster team-up comic.
Well, of course they did. It's Marvel. They've done every type of team-up possible.
They called the Legion of Monsters. But the lineup was Ghost Rider, Man-Thing, Werewolf by Night, and Morbius.
It's Morbin time.
It was Morbin time on that day.
Yeah, I saw this was a side tangent, but I saw another interview where somebody was interviewing Matt Smith and they brought up the whole fucking Morbin time shit again.
God,
and you could just see like how he was like trying to answer it, like just trying to be professional about it. But you could just see like the light in his eyes going out, just like being so fed up with this bullshit.
Right.
I was like, I felt bad for him. I was like, oh God, why did you even ask that? That's such a stupid thing to bring up, some meme that he wasn't even aware of until just recently. And like, why would you do that,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, why would you do that? But to get back to Werewolf by Night, I love this special. I want to see more of this. I want to see Marvel go into horror some more and explore like their monster horror side of the MCU a lot more.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. There's a lot of things that this special has made me want from Marvel. As I already said, I want more specials. I love the idea of specials.
I was disappointed that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness didn't lean as much into horror as like I thought it was supposed to when it was announced.
Yeah.
Like they pulled back from that, especially with Sam Raimi. We know Sam Raimi like did a fantastic job. It was like a lot of creepy elements. There was fantastic kills in that movie, but it pulls back. I know Sam Raimi can definitely get into it. We've seen The Evil Dead. Like,
yeah.
But
what Sam Raimi is particularly good at in horror is like being relentless.
Yes.
And you can't really do that in something and keep it at like a PG-13 or lower, you know?
That's true, yeah. I don't think we'll see R-rated, but this proves that they could do something with a more horror bent and keep it like PG-13. This wasn't like R-rated.
Yeah. It's a very different type of horror, but it's still authentic.
Yeah, it's still authentic.
To its horror roots. So
yeah, I'd love to see more of this.
I'd love to see more monsters. I'd love to see more, because this also takes us back to when the MCU, I think, was at its best, was like around the time like Winter Soldier and then Guardians came out, like around that era, I think was when the MCU was probably at its absolute best. And one of the things about that, one of the tropes about Marvel at that time was all of the Marvel movies, they were like specific tropes and genres of movies, but told within the MCU. So like Winter Soldier was very specifically like a 70s style espionage movie. Ant-Man, it was changed a little bit, but in its original form, when Edgar Wright was writing it, it was like a comedy, like heist movie.
Yes.
You know? And the idea of like, okay, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna do it like this. And the idea that Werewolf by Night is a, 1950s universal horror movie.
Yes.
It's like, I love that, and I would love to see more of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean more horror movies, but I just love to see them do, like, hey, let's just do this as an MCU movie. We'll do, it's like I said about the idea of doing in the last topic, I said I would love to see like a romantic comedy with like New Asgard as the background or something. It's like that kind of stuff. It's like, let's just have a straight romantic comedy, not action scenes, just a straight romantic comedy, but it takes place in the MCU, you know?
Yes.
Let's do a horror movie in the MCU. Let's do a bromance movie in the MCU.
Different genres.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I love the idea of that. And so it's cool to see it kind of come back to that with Werewolf by Night, because we haven't really had like that in a while. Like everything's kind of felt more like, oh, it's just another MCU thing. And I like that still, but like it's kind of like losing one of the things that's special about the MCU.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of losing me. To be honest, I gotta say, I'm reaching diminishing returns with like my enthusiasm for these movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice to see something like different like this. It's a bit refreshing to me at this point.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah.
Like I said, it hits on so many fronts. It's like it's a unique premise handled in a unique way. It's just done well, period.
Yes.
It brings in the idea of doing specials, which I think is really cool, because some things you don't need a movie for, some things you don't need a series for, some things you just need a special for. And so I like the idea that this is like another route that Marvel can take to tell a story. I like every aspect of this. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. One of my favorite Disney Plus MCU things after WandaVision. I'd say this is probably my favorite MCU original Marvel thing after WandaVision.
Yeah, that's right. This is definitely one of my favorites.
It's exciting. But that's it. So next week, we are going to be talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. That's going to be our main topic. The whole series is available on Amazon Prime if you want to watch it before getting started. If you really want to go crazy, you can watch the movies too. But we're going to be talking about the series, not the movies. That's what we're going to be coming up next week. Before we close out the show, I just did want to add in one thing, which is that we lost Reiko Kodama this past week, or we found out about it this past week.
Yeah, that's sad.
We don't usually like to do these RIP segments, but at the end of the episode, sometimes we'll add them in if it's somebody big and influential. Reiko was a pioneer in the medium. She was one of the first female, like, major role creatives in video gaming, especially from the Japanese market.
Yeah. She was at Sega since like the 80s, and she had a big hand in like some of their biggest properties like Phantasy Star and even Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, Skies of Arcadia.
Skies of Arcadia. Like,
She was a very important figure in the Japanese gaming industry, and it's very typical in Japan that we get this kind of thing where somebody passes away and we don't even hear about it for months. That just has to do with like the private nature of like Japanese society and the way they do that. But yeah, we just thought it was appropriate to, say RIP to Reiko Kodama.
Absolutely. Legend.
That's it though. So thank you everybody for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at FoxLikeHero. Check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. You can go to any of the container stories for any of our podcasts. We can get all the relevant links, including our SoundCloud page, where you can get the RSS feed direct linked for for all of our podcast episodes. You can also just subscribe to our podcast through your podcast kind of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast, anything like that should work. Just look us up there and you should be able to find us. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotoscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.